Hello everyone, we are group 42 in CS 1944 and today we'll be presenting Google Grasshopper.
So what is Grasshopper? Grasshopper is a free Google product that teaches basic coding concepts to beginner coders. It can be used on mobile devices or on desktop, and it teaches users JavaScript. A lot of beginner coding programs teach with sort of like drag and drop boxes that just sort of teach the logic, whereas the big difference with Grasshopper is that you code in actual JavaScript. You don't have to type it, but when you code, you see the JavaScript and you start learning that early, which is very helpful because it limits the difficulty in jumping from just logic to writing actual code. So why JavaScript? One of the big things is that JavaScript is a very popular programming language for web development. About 98% of websites use JavaScript as a client-side programming language, which makes it a very useful skill to know and a useful skill to teach early. JavaScript can be used in web pages to connect servers to web applications, which is very helpful. And JavaScript allows dynamic web page behavior. Things like animation, changing text, and taking user input can all be done fairly easily with JavaScript. JavaScript also typically runs client-side and is often used in conjunction with HTML and CSS to make a pretty website that is easy to interact with.
JavaScript is a good first language to learn if you're just starting to code, and there are many advantages to learning it. It is one of the most popular programming languages used today by professional developers. It's already installed on every web browser, which makes it easier and more accessible for new programmers to start coding, as they will not have to set up a development environment. JavaScript supports object-oriented, functional, and imperative programming, which allows beginners to apply their skills to other languages such as Python or Java. It is also very versatile. It can be used for both front-end and back-end development. You can use it to create desktop, web, and mobile applications, and it can also aid in machine learning.
Some disadvantages to using JavaScript are that it can be disabled in the browser and built-in dynamics can be lost. The site that uses JavaScript can also stop running even when encountering a single error. There is a lack of security due to how everyone can see JavaScript code and clients can access the code. A cyber attack called an SQL injection can also be used by inserting malicious code into the existing code for the site. It's also difficult to understand JavaScript code across different browsers because the code is interpreted differently between the browsers. Finally, JavaScript isn't as efficient for debugging as languages such as C or C++.
Now we're going to go over some of the teaching methods employed by Grasshopper. So as you can see here, it's a pretty simple UI during lessons, and this is one of the earlier, more basic lessons. You can see that along the bottom, there's a collection of keys which you can use to input both methods and parameters. And it's a very subtle introduction to the concepts of methods and parameters that you can tell a computer to do something and can specify different ways of doing that something. But it also doesn't force students to actually type it in themselves and allows a much slower introduction into the concepts of coding.
Grasshopper has 8 modules that cover a variety of topics. Some of those topics are animations and web design. These units teach the programmer how to manipulate SVG images and the basics of HTML and CSS. In the early modules, they teach fundamental programming skills, such as using variables to store information, how to manipulate, traverse, and store data in arrays, using repeat loops like a for loop to solve problems, and how to use mathematical and Boolean operators to create expressions and applying these operators to conditional if statements. Some of Grasshopper's constraints are that it does not have a debug tool. If the user is having issues, they provide a reset button to start the challenge again. It does provide a debugging module where it introduces the concepts of bugs and code. It teaches users how to use try-catch clauses to handle exceptions or bugs, which is a form of preventing possible bugs in your code, but it is not debugging in the traditional sense. Grasshopper is also not equipped to handle syntax errors. There is no possibility of a user encountering syntax errors because the application gives users preset keys to program with.
As technology advances, programming is becoming a more and more of an essential skill. As presented earlier, we can see that JavaScript is a beneficial tool as well as a good first language for beginners. Grasshopper provides an easy and accessible ways for adults to learn JavaScript, and it provides users with fundamental programming skills that can be applied to other computer science related areas. Additionally, according to devskiller.com, 70% of companies are looking to hire a JavaScript developer.
So once you've completed the courses within Grasshopper, the end goal is to be able to use all these concepts that you've discovered throughout the course in order to create web pages with HTML, CSS, and to just have a better grasp overall of understanding coding, especially since it's becoming such an essential skill. It's critical that Grasshopper provides an easy and accessible way for adults to engage with this.
These are our resources. Thank you for listening to our presentation.